Call this meeting to order. If you stand and please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you, everyone. Welcome to the regular board meeting for the month of October. We're again virtual, so this meeting is being recorded. We don't have any board members online, so we don't have to do a roll call vote, which is nice. However, if there's any questions that anybody that's online has, feel free to email us and we'll get back to you since we aren't really able to do the public comment portion still. But with that, we'll get right into the agenda. There's two additions that are in front of you. They're just two non-instructional and probationary appointments. I think that was it, correct, Mr. Lindsay?
And that student.
All the student activity, that's part of your good business consent on the student activity.
It
So
just
we can
wasn't,
do
Okay,
it
so
just wasn't
yeah.
in the packet when I sent
Gotcha.
it to you.
Okay.
Yeah, we're retired.
And the retirement, that was in the packet as well.
Okay.
That was sent to us. Take a motion to approve the minutes from the regular meeting on September 10th. Motion by Mr. Ward, second by Mr. Warren. Any discussion? In favor? Carries 5-0. Motion to approve the minutes from our special meeting on September 22nd. Motion by Dr. Narby, second by Mrs. Cleveland. Discussion there. In favor? And that carries 5-0 as well. So first, before we go into Mr. Rumsey's report, we do have our independent auditor, Tom Zuber, here, and he's going to present the financial statements and results from our last fiscal year. So I will turn things over to you, Tom.
I'll come up here so you guys don't have to turn your backs. That works. Alrighty, so, okay, perfect. Alrighty, so you should have received the basic financial statements, inter-control communication in your board packets. The basic financial statements. It's roughly 60 some odd pages long this year. It continues to grow each and every year with all of the new reporting requirements that come up. The other document you should have is an executive summary, which is about 6 pages. All right, and that's the document we're going to focus on tonight. All right, the 60-page document, it does have a lot of good information in there. If you have an unqualified audit opinion in there, that's really the standard opinion. That's what you're looking for. There's also a management discussion and analysis, and that's about 7 or 8 pages long. And really, the intent is if you were to read through that, you have an idea of really what took place during the year. It talks about some financial future financial highlights. There's some summary financial information. There's also some budget variance discussions, as well as factors that impact the school district going forward. And Teresa puts that together and does a very nice job in talking about some of those items. So really the intent is to talk about what took place, just so the reader could get a basic idea of what took place during the year. And it really is a nice document. And most of that information we'll just highlight as we go through this executive summary. But again, I mentioned future factors, and it's kind of interesting because these financial results are the financial results of a budget process that you started almost 2 years ago, right? And now we're into a brand new year, a different set of circumstances. You're going through a whole unusual time right now, right? We've never seen some of these things. In fact, how things happen here are going to be dictated by what happens at the state level, right? How the decisions made at the state level will impact you going forward. And really, the district has done a very good job of reacting to some of those items, even as we talk about the year-end financial condition. And in the executive summary, on the first page, we really focus on the general fund. And when we talk a little bit about the general fund, it's kind of set up to have a 2-year comparison. But there are a couple items that are really important to talk about or highlight in the general fund when we're looking at that and looking at how the district is positioning themselves to begin to deal with some of the challenges over the next 3 to 5 years. And that really is what we're probably talking about, is a 3 to 5 year challenge for municipalities, for school districts. That's really been this historical trend, the last financial crisis. You know, year 1 and year 2 weren't too bad. We were able to get through year 1 and year 2. It was year 3 and year 4 where it really became more challenging. And that's why some of the items that the district has done over the past few years, especially relating to the reserve accounts, really what helped position the district to deal with some of those challenges. And we'll talk about those. But on the financial highlights, the executive summary, one of the things we look at, you know, you've got your assets on the top half of the page, your liabilities, what you owe on the middle half of the page. Really the one number to pay attention to in the middle half of the page, liabilities, is the retirement system, okay? What you owe to the retirement system at the end of the year. The biggest component of that is the teacher's retirement system. So as you know, New York State says, here's a rate. You calculate what you owe them based on the salaries that you pay, and you accumulate that up until the end of the year, and then you pay that to the retirement system in the fall. So it's a liability at the end of the year. It's about $1.2 million. That liability is lower than it was last year because the rates went down from 2019 to 2020. Well, the rates went up for 2021, if you recall, during your budget process, right? The rates went back up for the teacher's retirement system. And it kind of goes up and down a little bit from one year to the next. But one of the challenges that you folks are going to face over the next few years is what's going to happen with the retirement system and the rates that you have to pay in the retirement system, because those rates are really based on how the funds perform. So you have the employee retirement system and you have the teacher's retirement system. Both systems, the state says, here's a rate, you pay. And in fact, those systems have been very well funded over the past few years. New York State has done a great job in that piece of it, but it's because they say, here's a rate, you pay it. You really don't have a choice, you have to build it into your budget, as you all know. And so the challenge will be is what's going to happen to those rates in the next few years. In fact, I think with the employee retirement system, you just got a notification that the rates are going to go up about 15%, okay? So, you know, that's going to be one challenge. But those rates for both the retirement systems, they're going to come, they're basically calculated based on how the market returns are for those particular funds, right? And as you know, even though the stock market's back up, one of the challenges is their rates are based on the market returns. And if you know, many of those large corporations out there, they basically cut their dividends, right? The big fixed income where they might have their safety or their more conservative funds. So we may see the challenges in the pension system in the next few years. And the teacher's retirement system, which is that big component that you folks have, that's the largest piece of your budget. That calculation, the returns, they're delayed in the calculation of the rates. So you won't see the impact of today on those rates for another 2 to 3 years. Okay, and that's one of the reasons why this is going to be a 3 to 5 year challenge for school districts, because that rate doesn't happen for a while. Okay, but the district has really done a nice job. There are a couple of things on the bottom half of the financial statements that you've really done a great job in looking at and preparing for that, and that's really to the reserves that you folks have. Okay, and the district has developed a few reserves over the last couple of years. Specifically, you've got the employee retirement contribution reserve. Okay, so that's money set aside to help offset the costs related to the employee retirement system. That's positive. So those rates start to go up, you have some dollars set aside, right? And then recently, we have the teacher's retirement contribution reserve. Okay, so that's the other reserve that the district created. And that was just created 2 years ago. The law came out and it created this reserve, and this district said, yes, it's an important reserve to have. And you created it and you began to fund that reserve. That is very good. All right, that's excellent. That's really what you want to do. And the nice part about those reserves is the teacher's retirement reserve is capped. You can only fund into that 2% of the prior year teacher's salaries. So there's a cap on it, but then there's a 10% overall cap. Okay, 10%. So there's some caps on it, but the nice part about it is you can allocate money out of the ERS reserve down into the TRS reserve if you need to. Okay, so there is some flexibility between the two reserves, so that's very positive. But again, two reserves that you develop that will help you in the next 3 to 5 years. Very positive from the financial condition standpoint. The other couple reserves, you have the capital reserve, great reserve to have to help offset the local portion of a project, really to reduce the impact of the capital project. Okay, you've got some dollars in there. A little more restrictive because the voters vote to create it, and then they have to vote to pull money out of that reserve. Okay, so again, very positive reserve. They have, you've got employee benefit accrued liability reserve. That's there for vested benefits. Again, very positive. So when someone retires, you do a calculation and you may pay out some benefits, some vested sick or vacation days. You've got some dollars set aside for that. Okay, very good. So you really looked at the reserves and developed those reserves over the past few years. Very good, will really help you over the next few years, okay? And again, overall from last year to this year, your total equities, your reserves and fund balance, that went up about $750,000. You can see that on the bottom right-hand corner. Your total equities went up about $750,000. And one of the other areas we talk a little bit about are the appropriated fund balances, okay? And you can see in 2019, you appropriated $625,000 in fund balance to support the 19-20 budget. And then in 2021, you appropriated $1,125,000. Okay, so it's a big bump up from one year to the next, right? But that's because the district is planning for this next fiscal year. If you recall, one of the items that the board did a few weeks ago was you approved amending of the 2021 budget for some unanticipated expenditures relating to the safe reopening of the schools. Well, that gets reflected in this appropriated fund balance. So you're using some of that surplus to help offset any challenges in 2021. And if you don't spend all of those dollars, they'll roll to the following year. Okay, so you've really done a nice job in doing that. That's very positive. Okay, and I mentioned your total equities went up about $750,000, right? And you had appropriated $625,000 to support the 1920 budget, right? And what does that mean is if you're appropriating fund balance, that means you want to generate that much surplus just to break even. So your equities went up. So that means you generated about $1.4 million in budgetary surplus, right? Take that minus the $675,000. That gets you that $750,000 increase. Okay, very reasonable. All right, and then what you did was you allocated some of that to the $1,125,000. Okay, so although you went up significantly in that appropriated fund balance, it's for a one-time adjustment, right? You increased your expenses for reopening costs, and you increased your appropriated fund balance. Next year, we shouldn't have those reopening costs, right? Let's hope we don't have it. If we have them, we're all gonna be in trouble. So again, you've really done a nice job based on the financial results this year. You've really done a nice job in laying things out and helping the district and benefiting the district in this current year. You allocated some additional dollars into those reserves. In fact, you put about $220,000 into the teacher's retirement contribution reserve. So you funded that to the cap this year. Again, very positive. The other reserve you created was a liability reserve. Okay, so that's for an unanticipated claim or anything like that that comes. So you have some dollars set aside for that. So again, very positive from the financial statement standpoint. Your undesignated fund balance, that's your 4%. 1380, you're at 3.99%. Pretty darn good. All right, so very good job on getting to that at the end of this year. So again, from a financial statement standpoint, you ended the year in very good financial shape. Okay, you reacted to some of the challenges that you're going to see in the next 3 to 5 years. Very positive from a financial statement standpoint. Okay, you were able to do that because you generated some budgetary surpluses on both the revenue and the expense side of the budget. Very positive. Okay, generated budgetary surpluses of about $1.4 million, but then that goes down by what you appropriated in fund balance, and that's that total equity increase. Okay, so overall, very positive, very good results at the end of the year. All right. So this is a 6-page document, and I just covered about 5 of the pages in that conversation. So, so just to kind of highlight, the page 2, just a little more summary of the reserves. Again, I've already highlighted those. I don't think we need to go over that again, but you can see you're using reserves to support the 2021 budget as well. So not only the fund balance, but the reserves, okay? So you're anticipating utilizing some of those reserves in 2021, okay? Nothing too unusual there. Page 3, just the revenues, okay? And again, I know you've talked about some of those revenues, so your revenues came in a little short. I know there was an unusual trick item with the lottery aid this year, so I know you've talked about that. And then the other thing the district did is you probably heard about New York State withholding 20% from the school district, right? And they withhold 20% for cash flow purposes. But that's one of the items the district did too, is they said, well, if they're going to withhold 20%, we're going to adjust our receivables down 20%. If they're not going to pay us, we're not going to recognize it. That way you don't have to write it off in the future. It may come in. If it comes in, great. But the state says, we're not going to withhold any more money from you right now, but they also didn't say when they're going to pay you for the money they took. Okay, so very positive approach to adjust those at the end of the year. And that's the other reason why you see that shortfall there, okay? But so those are the 2 big items on the revenues. So really where those dollars came from to fund into your reserves came from the expense side of the budget, okay? To help offset that appropriated fund balance. We see that on page 4. Again, I think you're no different than any other school district out there where you generated more of a budgetary surplus this year than you had anticipated. Obviously, when you shut down schools and you turn off your heat or reduce your heat, lights are shut off, you certainly save in your central services, your general support area. So there's definitely some savings there. Maybe not what we would hope for if there's overtime, things like that you had to pay to others, but those are really the main reasons why you see the additional surpluses. But that's really where you come up with that $1.4 million, because if you take the $3 million expense budgetary surplus, you reduce it by the 1.5 revenue shortfall, right? That gets us down to that about 1.5 million, 1.4 million that you funded surplus that you generate, okay? So that's the 60-page document in a nutshell. Okay. Again, good financial conditions in here. All right. Okay. The other couple of pages on the handout, again, just a quick summary of the other funds. Your school lunch program, you're doing phenomenal in. You're doing an excellent job there. Keep up what you're doing. In fact, I think you need to contact some districts and talk to them about what you're doing. Because we've got some clients that are seeing some pretty significant shortfalls in the school lunch program. So you're doing an excellent job there. Debt service, again, those are just debt-related items. One of the things you did this year is you refinanced some debt. So you took a higher interest rate bond and you replaced it with a lower interest rate bond. That's why you see those transactions there. And then your capital projects, as you know, you were just in the final stages of finishing up some of the large capital projects that you have. So you've had a very, very active capital project over the past few years. So really nothing too unusual in that. Okay. So overall, that's the key financial information. So again, very positive from the long-term or from the operating type statements. Okay. Do you have any questions on that document? Okay. All right.
Just one thing.
Sure.
I know we had the surplus of $757,000, and I think a big reason for that, though, when we looked in there, when I looked through the statements, was because we transferred out of the debt service into the general fund. So our revenues actually were a little bit less than what we spent. Mm-hmm. So I'm just a little nervous about that trend continuing and not having the debt service to fall back on to help balance things. That was my only concern when I was going through the main statements there.
Yeah, and part of that service transfer, and Teresa probably walked you through this when she's really more of the expert on the state aid piece of it and how that funnels with your building aid.
Right.
Because some of that has to do with the timing of when your building aid comes on.
Yep.
So having to do that, you know, the idea was that because of your capital project reached a certain point, you won't need to see that transfer coming over like that anymore. So,
Right. It was just the fact that that was what created, the big reason why we created the extra equity.
Yeah.
But the revenues still were a bit less than the expenses overall. So I guess that was my only concern is hopefully, and part of that was because they withheld state aid. Obviously, our state aid revenue was way down.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of that service transfer, it relates to really the timing of the state aid, and you're trying to keep your revenue, we'll say, flat, if you will. And because you had a big drop off in state aid, you replace that drop off with that service money for 1 year, and then your state aid is going to bounce back up now that you're into the capital projects, right? And you're getting your aid, your building aid from the projects. So, okay. All right. Any other questions on that? Okay. The only other document you have is the internal control communication. Okay. And again, that is the you know, as we go through the audit, and I won't go into each. You've had a chance to take a look at it. Certainly, if you have any questions on them, but as we go through the audit process, we you know, interview different individuals. We review the different processes and procedures over the financial cycles. We document the different checks and balances. Pleased to report there are no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. So we do have a few procedural recommendations to enhance the checks and balances that you currently have in place. Okay. There were, I think, 6 items that we talked about in the past that the district corrected. So that's very positive. So I think it really is a nice conclusion on that. Okay. Certainly, if you have any questions on any specific items, I'll be happy to answer them. But overall, very positive. No material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. Some procedural recommendations to enhance what you're currently doing, and you're reacting to our recommendations. That's very, very positive from the audit side. Okay. Any questions?
Great. Any questions?
All right.
Thank you, and great job, Teresa, in managing things in the business office.
Doing a great job. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tom. Okay, so in the business section, we will, I believe it's in there, is to approve what the corrective action plan for the minor actions that we have to correct that were identified in the audit, so we'll do that a little later on, and then everything will get submitted to the state. Be all set. Golden. All right, please come on. Okay, so we'll jump back to your report, Mr. Rumsey.
Sure. So we've had first-hand experience now, moving back to remote instruction. Thankfully, it was just a day because we used our superintendent's conference day to offset the schedule, but we've had the adjustment in schedule. In a nutshell, I think you've seen my releases and emails I've sent to you, but we dodged a bullet, and if anything, it showed that with the positive case with a family with multiple grade levels, it showed our processes are in place and are working. As scary as it was, we had another student at the Elmira Bush campus that was part of that same family, and then a middle school student, and actually 2 middle school students, but one of them tested positive. Of all the moving and the complex contact tracing, which I have done every weekend since we started school in public health, has essentially resulted in 1/2 of a class, 1 pod of 7th grade being quarantined, which is horrible, but considering what it could have been, is where we're looking at the positive of it. everybody understands the protocols are in place for a reason, and I've been very proud of the staff and their ability to move through that. One of the things we're looking at now that we used the superintendent's conference day for was that preparing so we can transition even more smoothly with remote instruction, and planning for that long haul if we had to do it longer than that, because some of our neighbors have had to go into multiple weeks of the remote instruction already. Horseheads East has just announced that they've gone for several weeks now. So things are happening around. We kind of are moving through these fields of landmines and doing what we can to keep this under control, and I think we're doing a good job here. But Steuben County and the region as a whole is up significantly right now. I sent an email to staff today just basically showing that the amount just in the first week of October was a significant jump of positive cases and numbers of quarantines. The other pieces are, we've been meeting with the other superintendents and with county health and with state representatives, and the one thing that's been a frustration is the governor's come out with a new red, orange, and yellow focus of when to close schools down and by zip code. But everybody is still confused as to what the metrics are. No one really understands what he's asking, what he wants, whether it's by county, whether it's by zip code, whether it's by region. And we're trying to get a handle on that. We're not getting straight answers, and that's been the issues from the county, from not just ours, but Chemung, Tioga, everybody. Numbers aren't good, but we're better than the neighbors. As far as legislative otherwise as well, I met with Tom Reed this week, and we were talking about the stimulus package that at that point when we met was about hours away from being approved or not approved. There's still a chance, even though it doesn't look good in the media, but if it doesn't get approved in the next day or so, they're already talking it will get kicked to the end of January, early February, if any at all, which is pretty scary because the governor's using that as leverage right now on what's happening with the 20% state aid cuts. One of the pieces that is happening, and my prediction is it wouldn't happen until after the elections or toward the holidays, but at least the Department of Budget, and that's been points I've been trying to hammer home with our local legislators, are trying to get away from the straight across the board 20% cut and revisit that. First and foremost is no cut. The second stage would be, if there is, you can't go just straight across the board 20% cut, because the districts such as ours that are high need, rural district, heavily dependent on state aid would be devastated. This whole region would be catastrophic for the region, as opposed to maybe in Westchester County where there would be nothing whatsoever. So they're really looking at that piece. Otherwise, we've started athletics this week. We're holding our breath, and we want to get the kids playing. And and I can tell you that it's very satisfying to be up there. I've walked up to practices a couple of times, and to hear the laughter, to hear the kids enjoying themselves and doing what they can. It means every reason why we are doing it, even though every other time we say, why are we doing this? This is nuts. All you have to do is go spend the time there and you see why. So we're doing everything we can to continue that. I think our staff is doing a great job of running back and forth between the hybrid environment and, with the pods every other day. And, we've extended that calendar for ease for parents through the end of the semester, with the notion that we would give them a week's notice before we brought everybody back if we could do that. But it was a long discussion with the admin group over that, just based on, if we have a day, what's it do with the high school schedule versus childcare with the primary schedule. So we went with the blue-white no matter what's going to happen. And then we'll have the high school, middle school make up that day whatever way possible, because it was more important to not disrupt the daycare schedules and the work schedules for parents at this point. So, even in the midst of chaos, it makes you proud to be around when you see what's going on. I'll leave it at that.
Any questions?
Questions, concerns? Keeping the communication with the community open. I'd rather do overkill than not enough. And I've heard good feedback about the number of robocalls and social media posts and everything, but we'll keep it pushing.
What was the reaction when you talked to the legislators about not doing a straight 20%? Did they get that? How that would impact us?
I believe so. We've hammered it several times this week and at the point of, with Tom Reed, even though he's, at the federal level saying, we need your help. We were going to need your help to push this if it doesn't, so that they understand this. And with the federal stimulus package, understanding that, not all of us are fans of our governor and what's happening here, so don't hold us against us. We need, whatever it can take to get the stimulus package in here. I believe some of them, Palisano and Senator Romero, do understand that, but their hands are tied right now.
Okay. Because we saw in these numbers, 65% of our revenue is coming from the state aid.
It's millions of dollars, and depending on the size of the district, it doesn't make a difference unless you're sitting on the lake.
Right.
You are going to be devastated in this region. So I told Tom this week that your entire congressional district would be just decimated right now. It would be here to help us.
Yeah. Okay.
Put some pressure on Mobley somehow.
Any other questions?
It's a crazy time to get education right now, and we keep informing the kids and the teachers and the support staff that they're going to be writing about you in history books 100 years from now. And to keep that in mind as you're going through this chaos, and understand that the more positive we can be, and teamwork oriented, we'll be better off. And I think they're doing that.
Okay. Thank you. Going to district reports. Are we closed out with the capital project?
No.
See, Teresa's looking back there.
We're so close. We have every processed all the checks, and they're sitting in the vault waiting to be just handed off to the contractors if they could just finish off those last few punch list items. We keep reminding them that check has a shelf life. So, if you don't finish, we're not reprocessing it. So,
Especially if they cut building aid.
yeah, you can.
Okay. Any questions on any of the administrative reports that were sent? It's kind of nice to see how some of the pictures are showing what it looks like during the day. So thank you to the administrators. I know some of you were on, so we really do appreciate you guys submitting those. It helps us get a feel for what is going on during the day because we're not in here. So.
Just one of the questions I had is around the attendance. It's tough to tell year over year. What's the attendance factor look like with the remote learning versus being here all the time? Are we in comparison to a normal year, if you will? I see the numbers, but it doesn't have any comparison.
I think at this point, I would say we're still very unstable with everything going on with the different pieces. We go through a week of unrest, and you see people not wanting to send their kids, even if they are eligible to do it and everything. You want in there, maybe?
I haven't really pulled it back to reports. Sometimes, when we went to remote day, some of the attendance was great. It was like a lot of kids checked in, they were into their classes. Then there was a day we were at an administrative meeting, and was worried about attendance, and all the buildings was really low that day. I don't know why, but then it kind of rebounded the next day. So like Joe said, it's kind of.
It really is. It's really unpredictable right now. There was days a couple times I'm thinking, because we're watching that, thinking there's something going on that we're not even aware of because you see all these kids home that are ill. You're starting to see flu season. You're starting to see some of these other, fall allergies are horrible, and you're trying to figure out that in addition to, oh my gosh, it's, and then, you throw in the fact that return to school protocols, the state had one and the county trumped it with, okay, we're going to allow some physicians overruling. And then as of today, Randy hasn't seen this yet. We have the toolkit has been revised by the county to do this again. We have to send back out for returning. So some of those folks they were out, they had symptoms, and they're not back yet because they still have to get that clearance. So that even impacts your attendance at this point. So one day of cold symptoms and you're out for 3 because you can't get to the doctor to get cleared to come back. So yeah, we're monitoring like that. Wish I had a better answer, but
Kind of what I expected.
Yeah, straightforward. Straightforward for 2020.
Any other questions on the admin reports? And of course, thank you all the staff to what you're adapting.
Absolutely.
We can see within those reports that it's definitely a big change, but we definitely appreciate all your efforts in that, so thank you. Take a motion then to approve the recommendations from the Committee on Special Education. Motion by Mr. Warren, second by Mr. Ward. Any discussion? All in favor? Carries 5-0. Okay. On to the recommendations of the superintendent. Motion to approve the business items consent agenda. Motion by Mrs. Cleveland, second by Dr. Narby. Any discussion on those items? All in favor? And that carries 5-0. All right, we have a first reading on a new Title IX policy. Mr. Brzezinski, I know you had a big presentation on this.
They've been federal law changed, and our attorneys were, like they usually are, very supportive, and they've written policy for us. Our student policy needs to be adjusted a little bit, so that's what you're looking at there, the new policy. Our staff policy just needed a couple sections removed. Basically, that's just one right after that. So these are right in line. Attorneys have written them, and we just kind of put our name on it at this point.
Yeah. Boilerplate with changes for the Title IX. Nothing major in the sexual harassment. The one following is just removing the old Title IX language out of that.
These don't need a special hearing before we adopt them like some of the other.
No. And I they're so straightforward. If you want to waive the first reading, we could, but it's fine.
Yeah, we'll just kind of do it how we usually do it.
Okay, it's fine.
In case there's any other questions or something happens to come up in the next month. So any questions on these two policy updates, the Title IX and the sexual harassment? Okay, so next month we'll formally adopt the changes. External audit report, the corrective action plan, that was in the packet. Teresa, is there anything you wanted to highlight in that? Anything needs discussion?
Basically, the girls have done a great job, and we just had the capital smart money, this is his recommendation. And he met with us today to go over the new rules for the CSD for us. So,
More Gatsby rules.
no.
So are you aware of the Gatsby stuff? Teresa? You don't want to know, but sometimes we have an hour that you.
She's got her training coming up, I'm sure.
It's painful. Okay. But we go through all that, we should bring them up to speed on that.
Okay, motion
Just
to.
a question, this, the cybersecurity finding that was there.
You should have.
I mean, it talks about the policy and communication of the policy. Is there any training that we do around cybersecurity? I mean, not only just for financial reasons, but for personal reasons as well. Is there?
We're, in fact, all the new Ed 2D laws that are out there now with privacy data and everything else, the staff learned in the past year, we've been going overkill with the number of things that we have to report now as part of the Ed 2D laws. And today, Randy reviewed with the professional learning committee that just like you do with the right to know for chemical compounds, there's a whole new online Ed 2D training that's going to go on between now. As soon as I think the right to know closes like October 15th. Yeah, so once that's done, we're going to begin this and get that, and the staff will have until Thanksgiving to get that done.
Okay.
So once a year, they have to go through that, and that's about an hour and a half program with tests along, quizzes along the way and such, and then we have to continue the dialogues to go with it.
Okay.
That's the one good thing out of the private Ed 2D laws that came through with it, but it's eye-opening to show people that, what could happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you get those RFPs from Pro Action.
Yeah, I know. Not the minutes show that, wasted it because she's not here.
Yeah, I know. Okay, motion then to approve the external audit report and corrective action plan. Motion by Mr. Warren, second by Mr. Ward. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carries 5-0. Okay, we got some more tax adjustments to talk about. My favorite subjects.
Oh. Yeah, so, Mr. Wheeler gives me a call. It's either pandemic materials or it's a correction of error right now. So Teresa will go through this here more in detail, but the bottom line is that, if you remember last year, 2 years ago, we had the huge event centers come out of the cluster of the re-eval of the town of Bath. We did the prior year adjustment last year, so we have a little history lesson going on, thinking, okay, we're coming out of this, when we were informed of, once again, that there was a problem with the sale of the REA property that was up at the county landfill. And it didn't get filed appropriately or whatever. We're still figuring that out, kind of investigating. And you saw the memo with the results. Jason, you want to pick it up from there?
I just, I wanted you aware of it. We originally went out with $165,000 tax increase, which this property and the other ones that I had attached amounted to $143,000, and with the adjusted bills, we're getting 21. So we've lost out of the 165, we lost 121,000. So this year, with no other tax adjustments, our income and taxes is only going to be 43,000. So that's not a good thing, but also be aware that they had the assessed value of that property at $7.1 million. So that will be coming off the tax rolls for our taxes for next year. So we're going to see some changes. So just,
That's the bigger issue.
Yeah.
That's the bigger issue right now, and on my recommendation to you and Teresa and I have discussed, we don't want to do any more prior year adjustments. We'll figure this out for this year. It's next year that the loss of revenue is going to be huge.
Well, it's that, and again, all the tax rates are wrong.
And explaining that to the folks that are paying attention to their tax bills. And once again, it's one that creates, in my mind, I'm glad we have a trusted community, but these little things that even are out of our control are putting cracks in that bothers me.
All right.
Thanks, Teresa.
Not good.
All right, on to another.
Wait, before you do, did you want to add anything with
We had, for September, before the penalties started, we've collected 76% of the taxes already, which is very well. Usually by the end of October, we range anywhere from 89 to 92% collection. So I think things are going very well.
Good.
And I'll keep you posted as we get towards the end of the month.
Thank you. We briefly discussed this a little bit at our special meeting back in the end of September regarding the Spanish Costa Rica trip. So you remember back in March, this was the one that was postponed once everything hit with the COVID. Now we had a memo regarding what are we going to do because it's still so much uncertainty of what the spring is going to look like. And if we don't make a decision now, we got a certain time frame where we can make a decision to either cancel it or keep it going. If we cancel it, then the families would get the money back.
following that schedule?
Following the schedule.
For most of it.
Yeah, most
Based
of
on what insurance they had, if we don't do it, and it makes me sick of this because I've asked Mr. Hyde, we were trying to figure out a way to kick the can down the road to buy more time. But if we don't do it and then they reverse and we're still stuck in New York with issues, that everybody could lose some significant amount of money that they've already put in. And that's hard to swallow when people are struggling right now.
Yes.
Yep.
So, and really essentially, you're making decisions on folks' personal finances. That's the toughest part of this right now.
Mhm. So, does anybody want to make a motion then to, well, I guess we can still have a little more discussion. I think we kind of talked again a little bit at our last meeting about probably the right way to go would be, because of the uncertainty, it would be to cancel it, to give the families a chance to recoup their funds. Obviously, if not knowing what might happen in the spring and then people are out all that money, as Joe mentioned, the economy's not that great around here right now, so that would be very tough to swallow. So are there any?
So I guess how much have they, I guess, committed to this point? And when's the next payment due? When, you know, it's a scheduled payment, right, type of thing, isn't
Not
it?
everyone.
Roughly.
Not everyone.
Some have paid it all up front.
Yeah.
Okay.
everybody's-
Okay.
Basically, because the trip was last year.
Right.
So basically, everything is in that
Everything's
account
okay.
now,
Okay.
and, yeah,
Yeah.
right now, it's that window of the next date.
Right.
Is, before our next board meeting. Otherwise I was gonna say, well, let's kick it to the November board meeting or have a special board meeting, and nothing's gonna happen between now and 2 weeks from now.
Right.
And then at that point, they talked about, well, they typically don't make that decision, but if they decide to go and, the worst case scenario is they cancel, they refund it the way it is right now. That's where it is right now.
The other wild card we have is Costa Rica. They may shut people out from coming. I mean, we might be good, but they might say, nobody's coming from New York or wherever. So, I mean, that's another wild card you have, not only us, but them.
Yeah.
So probably the most prudent thing is to, I think, have them get the maximum amount of money back now.
It's sickening because these are the experiences that they're once in a lifetime experiences for the kids.
Mhm.
And we don't want to lose these, but we're tied. We are absolutely tied to the companies that put these on.
It's too much money for the parents.
Lose.
Just lose. I mean, it's so disappointing for everybody, especially the seniors that graduated that were
Yeah,
gonna go.
that we're gonna go. So this year.
You know.
Okay. So during this conversation, is there a motion?
I would make a motion to rescind our approval for the Costa Rica trip.
Motion there by Mr. Warren, is there a second? Second by Mr. Ward. Any other discussion or questions?
Is this where I abstain?
Yes. Abstain. Okay, all in favor? Opposed, abstentions, so the motion to rescind the approval of it passes 4-0 with one abstention, Dr. Narby. Again, that's not something we really wanted to
We are so
do, but
sorry.
based
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
the uncertainty out there and just, I think it's the
Sad.
best decision for the families at this point. Okay, personnel. Is there any items that need to be pulled from the personnel consent agenda? Does anybody need to abstain on that? Nope. Okay, motion then to approve the personnel consent agenda. Motion by Mrs. Cleveland, second by Dr. Narby. Any discussion? All in favor? Carries 5-0. Okay, we have one instructional retirement request, and that is from Glenda Mastey, who's been a long-term teaching assistant. She's looking to retire October 30th. So a motion then to approve that request. Motion by Mr. Ward, second by Mrs. Cleveland. Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0. We thank her for all of her years of service here, and we just wish her the best in retirement. We miss her. Absolutely. Okay, the other instructional action item that we had that was in your packet was in the memo from Mr. Rumsey to the board regarding hiring Mr. Edwall again as a retiree working as a temporary hire. That's something we had to do each year. Anything else you want to kind of touch on that?
It's just because we have advertised and recruited for a technology teacher, the industrial arts type of teacher. State Ed has even told us they call it the unicorn position because there's so few out there, which is amazing because that's a position I think there'll be a lot of. And so the third year in a row, he's eligible for this, that based on Mrs. Logston's retirement last year, opened up another vacancy there. So we're utilizing Mr. Wall's services while we can as a certified technology industrial arts teacher. And this, by hiring this temporary hire, allows him the waiver so he can collect his pension and live here.
So motion to approve that recommendation. Motion by Mr. Ward, second by Mr. Warren. Any discussion? All in favor? And that carries 5-0. On to the non-instructional recommendations. There is a resignation request from Andrea Berry, who is our district treasurer, who is moving or has moved already down south. Sad to see her go, but the motion then to approve the resignation request for Andrea Berry. Motion by Mrs. Cleveland, second by Dr. Narby. Any discussion? All in favor? And that carries 5-0. We have the additions that were in front of you were for probationary appointments, all for vacant positions, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Unless, if there's no objection, we'll just kind of do this as a consensus and I'll just read the names. Okay. First is from Jonathan Key to be appointed as a bus monitor. We also have Rashawn Sabins as cleaner and Renee Ortiz as a teacher aide. And these again are probationary appointments for a 26-week period. So motion to approve those appointments. Motion by Mr. Warren, second by Dr. Narby. Discussion? All in favor? And that carries 5-0. And one permanent appointment, and that is Alicia Hode as bus monitor, has completed the probationary period, so motion to approve the permanent appointment of Alicia Hode. Motion by Mrs. Cleveland, second by Mr. Ward. Any discussion there? All in favor? And that carries 5-0. All right. We do have to go into a quick executive session just for discussion on the superintendent's contract and a personnel item. There may be a action taken after that regarding the contract of Mr. Lindsay. Other than that, that's the only thing that would be, okay? So, again, we're not doing any visitor statements because of the virtual format, so it doesn't look like any public is online. If any of the administrators have questions for us, I'm sure they know how to get in touch with Mr. Lindsay.
I'll see him. We'll see him around.
No, but again, thank you all that are online. Again, thank you for your efforts and everything you're doing along with your staffs at the start of the school year. So, you've done a great job so far. Thank you. With that, I'll take a motion then to go into an executive session. Motion by Mrs. Cleveland, second by Dr. Narby. Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0. Thank you. Probably pause it. Motion to adjourn? Sorry.
Softly, gentlemen. I still can't complain. An hour and 10 minutes.
Not bad.
All right, 7:10, 10:11.
So motion adjourned by Mrs. Cleveland, second by Dr. Narby. Sorry. All in favor? 5-0.